In a pivot table, you can use different functions for the values. By default, the values go in as sum or count, and here we have a sum of quantity. The subtotals show the sum for each region, and the grand total is the overall sum. When we change this function, right-click, summarize by count, now each region shows the count, and the grand total is a count. I'll go back to sum again. And we can add more subtotals for each region, but the grand total only shows one row. So we're going to see how we can add extra subtotals and then a workaround for showing multiple grand totals. For the East region, I'm going to right-click on that cell, go down to Field Settings, and in this window, right now it's set for Automatic, which is the sum. I'll select Custom and click on Sum. I'd also like to see an average. When I click OK, we can now see two rows for the subtotal. So here's the sum for the East and the average quantity per order. And the same for the West, the sum and the average. But the grand total doesn't change. It continues to show just the sum. As a workaround, we can go to the source data. So on this store sales sheet is the data that I used for the pivot table. I'm going to insert a column. So I'll click on column C, then right-click and insert. That puts in a column. It's calling column 1. I'm going to call this grand total and leave the rest of the column blank. All we need is the heading, which will create a field that we can use as our new grand total. Going back to the store pivot sheet, I'll right-click somewhere in this pivot table and click refresh. And now that grand total field is showing up in the field list. I'll drag that so that it's the first field in the rows area. You can see it now as blank because all the cells in that column are blank and nothing else has changed. For this field, instead of it showing blank, I'm going to select that cell and press a space bar. That makes the cell look empty, but there's a space character in there. I want to subtotal this row, just like we subtotaled the regions, and then get that subtotal down at the bottom. With this cell selected, I'll right-click and subtotal grand total. So now there's a subtotal at the top. We can see that it's exactly the same as the grand total. I'd like to move this down to the bottom though, and to do that, go to the Design tab, Subtotals, Show All Subtotals at Bottom of Group. It moves that to the very bottom, so it's right there with the grand total, and we can hide the grand total. Move this up a bit so we can see. I'll right-click and remove the grand total. So now we just have our new total that we created, and to get multiple grand totals now, I'll right-click, Field Settings, and do the same thing that I did for the regions. So for Custom, I'll select Sum and Average and maybe Max. So we'll have 3 rows as our grand total, and click OK. And now for the overall results for our pivot table, we can see the sum, which was what we had before as a grand total. But here's also an average and a max. So the highest quantity in any order was 460. The average was 48. For more Excel tips and tutorials, and to download the sample file for this video, please visit my Contextures website at www.contextures.com.